Dr. Benjamin Carter wiped the sweat from his forehead as he looked around the alien medical bay. Everything was strange here. The walls glowed with a soft blue light, and the medical tools looked nothing like what he was used to back on Earth. After 20 years working in Detroit's busiest trauma center, Ben thought he had seen everything. But this was different. This was his first week aboard the Asclepius, a medical ship flying between the stars. The other doctors on the ship did not trust him. They whispered when they thought he could not hear them. He was human, and humans came. From Earth, a death world. Most aliens in the galaxy believed humans were only good for fighting and killing. The idea of a human doctor seemed crazy to them. Ben's hands were steady as he checked his medical kit one more time. He had volunteered for the Galactic Medical Exchange Program because he wanted to help people. It did not matter to him if those people had blue skin, 4 arms, or breathed methane instead of oxygen. Pain was pain, and Ben knew how to fix it. Alarms suddenly rang through the ship. Red lights flashed everywhere. Dr. Sylvan, the chief medical officer, rushed into the room. Sylvan was an Altarian, tall, thin, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. His 6 arms moved quickly as he grabbed medical supplies. "Emergency incoming," Sylvan said in his musical voice. "Zelarian trader ship attacked by pirates. 1 survivor, critical condition. ETA 3 minutes. Ben started to move toward the operating table, but Sylvan held up one of his hands to stop him. "This is not a job for a human," Sylvan said. His voice was not mean, but it was firm. "Zelarian biology is complex. 1 mistake could kill the patient." Ben wanted to argue, but he stepped back. He watched as the other alien doctors prepared the operating room. They moved with precision, every action planned and careful. Ben respected their skill, but he also noticed something else. They were scared. The doors burst open, and 2 Corellian medics carried in the patient on a floating stretcher. Ben's heart sank when he saw the injured Zelarian. The alien looked like a cross between a lizard and a berg, with green scales and small feathers around his neck. Blood that looked purple in the strange light was everywhere. "Patient's name is Kithvel," one of the Corellians said quickly. "Multiple organ damage, severe blood loss, neural trauma. He's been unconscious for 2 hours." Dr. Sylvan moved to examine the patient. His instruments beeped and hummed as he scanned Kithvel's body. The other doctors gathered around, speaking in low voices. Ben could not hear everything they said, but he caught enough words to understand. The patient was dying. "Internal bleeding in the thoracic cavity," Sylvan announced. "Neural pathways damaged, blood pressure dropping rapidly." Ben watched from the corner as the alien doctors worked. They were skilled, but they were also following procedures step by step. They measured everything twice, checked every reading 3 times. Ben understood why they worked this way. Alien biology was dangerous to guess about. But sometimes, when someone was dying, there was no time for perfect procedures. "We need to operate now," said Dr. Zeltor, a draconian doctor with blue scales. "But the neural damage makes surgery extremely risky. If we make one wrong cut, the patient will die," Sylvan finished. "But if we do nothing, he will also die." The doctors stood around the table, unsure what to do. Ben could see Kithvel's breathing getting weaker. The monitors showed his vital signs dropping. Ben could not stand it anymore. He stepped forward. "Let me help," he said quietly. Dr. Sylvan turned to look at him. "Human, I told you this is not." "He's dying," Ben interrupted. "Right now, while we're talking, he's dying. I've seen injuries like this before." "Impossible," Dr. Zeltor said. "You have never seen a Zelarian before today." Ben moved closer to the table. "No, but I've seen trauma. I've seen what happens when someone gets hurt badly, and there's no time to think about it." In Detroit, people came to me with gunshot wounds, stab wounds, car accidents. Sometimes you have to act fast, or they don't make it. The alien doctors looked at each other. Ben could see they were thinking about it. The neural pathways, Sylvain said slowly. If we damage them, then we'll fix them, Ben said. He was already putting on gloves. Or we'll find another way. But standing here talking about it won't save him. Dr. Sylvain was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Very well. But I am in charge of this operation. Ben smiled. Of course. Just tell me what you need. They worked together for the next 4 hours. Ben's hands moved quickly and surely, guided by 20 years of experience, saving lives in impossible situations. When the alien instruments were too slow, he used his hands to stop bleeding. When the procedures were too complicated, he found simpler ways to fix the damage. The other doctors watched in amazement. Ben did things they had never seen before. He sutured wounds with a speed that seemed impossible. He stopped internal bleeding using pressure techniques that looked crude but worked perfectly. Most importantly, he never gave up. Neural activity increasing, Dr. Saltor announced. Blood pressure stabilizing. Organ function returning to normal. Added another doctor. When it was over, Tithbel was breathing normally. His vital signs were strong and steady. He would live. Dr. Sylvain looked at Ben with new respect. I have never seen anything like that, he said quietly. Your techniques are so aggressive, but they worked. Ben cleaned his hands and smiled. Sometimes aggressive is what you need. Sometimes you have to fight to save a life. Word of what happened spread quickly through the ship. Soon, everyone was talking about the human doctor who had saved the Zalarian. Trader, some were impressed, others were frightened. But all of them were curious. As Ben walked back to his quarters that night, he felt good about what he had done. This was why he had come to space, to help people, no matter who they were, or where they came from. He did not know it yet, but this was just the beginning of something much bigger. In his room, Ben looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there were billions of people who might need his help someday. The thought did not scare him. It excited him. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new patience, new chances to prove that humans could be healers as well as warriors. Ben was ready for whatever came next. 3 months had passed since Ben Carter saved Kithbel's life. Word about the human doctor had spread to other ships and space stations. Some alien doctors were curious about his methods. Others thought he was dangerous. But everyone wanted to see what he could do. Ben found himself getting called to harder and harder cases. Patients that other doctors had given up on were sent to him. He did not mind. Every challenge taught him something new about alien biology. Today was different, though. Today he was going to a place where people were dying by the hundreds. Mining colony on Kepler 442b was in trouble. A strange sickness had started 3 weeks ago. First, a few miners got sick, then dozens. Now hundreds of beings from 12 different species were dying, and no one knew why. Ben stood on the bridge of the medical transport ship Mercy as they approached the planet. The world looked brown and dusty from space. Mining operations had been going on there for 50 years, digging up rare metals that powered starships. Dr. Carter, Captain Martinez called from his chair. We're getting a message from the colony. The screen flickered to life. A tired-looking Corellian appeared. His fur was matted with sweat, and his eyes were red from exhaustion. Medical. Ship Mercy, this is Dr. Velkarn on Kepler 442b. Thank the stars you're here. We've lost 43 patients in the last 2 days. The sickness is spreading faster than we can treat it. Ben stepped forward. Dr. Velkarn, this is Dr. Carter. What are the symptoms? Fever, difficulty breathing, organ failure. But here's the strange part. It affects each species differently. What kills a draconian in ours might take days to kill a human. We can't find a pattern. Ben frowned. Any idea what caused it? We think it started in the deep mines. New section they opened last month. But we've tested everything. Air, water, soil. Nothing. When they landed on the planet, Ben was hit by the heat and a smell of dust and machinery. The colony was built into the side of a mountain, with metal buildings connected by covered walkways. Everything looked industrial and harsh. Dr. Zara Okafor was waiting for them at the landing pad. She was a xenobiologist, a human scientist who studied alien life forms. Ben had worked with her once before on a space station near Jupiter. She was smart, really smart, and she understood alien biology better than most aliens did. Ben, Zara said as they shook hands, good to see you again, though I wish it was under better circumstances. What do we know? Ben asked as they walked toward the medical center. It's like nothing I've ever seen, Zara said. The pathogen seems to adapt to each species. For draconians, it attacks their breathing system. For humans, it goes after the liver. For Zalarians, it affects their neural pathways. They entered the medical center, and Ben's heart sank. Patients filled every bed, and many more lay on stretchers in the hallways. Doctors and nurses from various species moved between them, but Ben could see the exhaustion and despair on their faces. Dr. Velkarn met them inside. Dr. Carter, Dr. Okafor, welcome. I hope you can help us where we have failed. Ben looked around at the patients. How many species are affected? 12 so far. Humans, Draconians, Corellians, Zalarians, Altarians, and 7 others. Each showing different symptoms, but all dying from organ failure in the end. Ben walked to the nearest human patient, a woman named Kate, who worked in the communications center. She was conscious, but looked very weak. How are you feeling, Kate? Ben asked gently. Like I've been hit by a truck, she whispered. Everything hurts, and I can't keep food down. Ben examined her carefully. Her liver was enlarged, and her blood tests showed toxin levels that should have killed her already. But she was still alive, still fighting. He moved to the next bed, where a young draconian miner lay unconscious. His breathing was labored, and his blue scales had turned pale. Different symptoms, but the same determined struggle to live. Zara, Ben called. Come look at this. They spent the next 2 hours examining patients from different species. Ben took notes on everything. How the sickness progressed, how long each species survived, what treatments helped, and what made things worse. I think I see a pattern, Ben said finally. It's not really 12 different diseases. It's one disease that's incredibly smart. What do you mean? Dr. Velkarn asked. Back on Earth, we have parasites and viruses that adapt to their hosts. But this is different. This pathogen seems to study each species and then attack their weakest point. Zara nodded slowly. Like it's learning as it goes. Exactly. But here's the thing. It's also making mistakes. Look at the survival times. Humans are lasting longer than they should. Draconians are fighting off the respiratory symptoms better than expected. Because our immune systems evolved on Deathworlds, Zara said, understanding immediately. Right. Earth tried to kill us in a million different ways for millions of years. Our bodies learned to fight back against everything. We might not have the best immune system for this specific pathogen, but we have the most adaptable one. Ben turned to Dr. Velkarn. I need blood samples from every human patient, healthy and sick. And I need them now. What are you planning? The Corellian doctor asked. Something crazy, Ben said with a grin. Something that will either save everyone or get me kicked out of the medical service. For the next 6 hours, Ben and Zara worked. In the laboratory, they analyzed human immune responses, comparing healthy humans to sick ones. They found that some humans were fighting off the infection better than others. "There," Zara said, pointing at the computer screen. "These 3 humans have antibodies that are actually working against the pathogen. Can we synthesize those antibodies?" Ben asked. "Maybe. But even if we can, how do we adapt them for other species?" Ben was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he did something that made Zara gasp. He picked up a syringe filled with active pathogen and injected it into his own arm. "Ben, what are you doing?" "Testing a theory," he said calmly. "If I'm right, my immune system will start producing antibodies in the next few hours. If I'm wrong, ... you could die. Then you'll know not to try this on anyone else." Word spread quickly through the medical center about what the human doctor had done. Some thought he was brave. Others thought he was insane. But everyone watched and waited. 6 hours later, Ben was still healthy. His blood showed active antibodies, fighting the pathogen. More importantly, his immune system had figured out how to attack the disease at its core, not just its symptoms. Working with Zara, they modified Ben's antibodies to work with different alien biologies. It was not perfect, but it was a start. They began treating the sickest patients first. Kate was the first to recover. Within 12 hours of receiving the modified treatment, her fever broke and she was able to eat solid food. The draconian miner started breathing normally. One by one, patients began to get better. Dr. Velkarn found Ben in the laboratory 3 days later. "Dr. Carter, I owe you an apology. When I heard a human doctor was coming, I thought it was some kind of joke. I was wrong." "We all were wrong," Ben said tiredly. "I thought I understood alien medicine. Turns out I still have a lot to learn. But you saved us. You did something none of us could do." Ben looked out the window at the mining colony. People were back to work, back to their normal lives. We saved each other. That's how it should be. As they prepared to leave Kepler 442b, Ben reflected on what had happened. He had learned that human medicine was not better than alien medicine. It was just different. Sometimes that difference was exactly what was needed. The colony's leaders erected a small monument to commemorate the end of the plague. It was simple, just a metal plaque with words in 12 different languages. But the message was the same, in all of them, in gratitude to those who refused to give up. Ben did not know it yet, but news of what happened on Kepler 442b was already spreading through the galaxy. The human doctor who injected himself with a deadly pathogen to save others was becoming something of a legend. And this was still just the beginning. 6 months after the plague on Kepler 442b, Ben Carter had become famous throughout the galaxy. Medical journals wrote articles about his methods. Young doctors wanted to study under him. But fame also brought problems he had not expected. Ben was in his quarters aboard the research vessel Hippocrates when Captain Jake Morrison knocked on his door. Jake was a good man, steady, smart, and someone Ben had learned to trust completely during their travels together. "Ben, we've got a situation," Jake said as he entered. His face was serious, more serious than Ben had ever seen it. "What kind of situation?" "The kind that could start a war," Jake said quietly. "Princess Lyraneth of the Luminian Empire is dying." Ben felt his stomach drop. The Luminians were one of the most powerful races in the galaxy. They were beings made of pure energy who lived inside crystal bodies. Most people had never even seen a Luminian in person. "What does that have to do with us?" Ben asked, though he already suspected the answer. "The Luminian Emperor has requested you specifically. Every doctor in the galaxy has tried to help the princess. None of them could even figure out what was wrong with her." Ben sat down heavily on his bed. "Jake, I don't know anything about Luminian biology. They're not even made of the same stuff as the rest of us." "That's exactly why they want you," Jake said. You see things differently. You solve problems other doctors can't solve. 3 days later, they arrived at the Luminian homeworld of Chrysalis. Ben had never seen anything like it. The entire planet seemed to glow with soft light. Cities were built from living crystal that grew like trees. The air itself sparkled with energy. Emperor Zethkari met them at the palace. He was 12 feet tall and looked like a figure carved from diamond, with light flowing through his body like liquid fire. When he spoke, his voice sounded like music. "Dr. Carter," the Emperor said, bowing slightly, "thank you for coming. You are our last hope. Your Majesty, I need to be honest with you. I've never treated a Luminian before. I might not be able to help, but you will try," the Emperor said. It was not a question. Princess Lyraneth lay in a chamber made of pure crystal. She was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, like staring into the sun. But Ben could see that something was wrong. The light inside her body was flickering like a candle in the wind. Dr. Sylvan was already there. The Altarian doctor had become Ben's friend and partner over the past months. His 6 arms were busy with instruments that Ben did not recognize. "What's the situation?" Ben asked. "Her energy matrix is collapsing," Sylvan said sadly. "The light that gives her life is fading. We estimate she has perhaps 2 days left." Ben looked at the princess more carefully. "What have you tried?" "Everything," said Dr. Nelvox, a Luminian physician who looked like a walking sculpture made of blue crystal. "Energy transfusions, quantum stabilizers, harmonic resonance therapy. Nothing works." Ben spent the next hour talking to every doctor who had examined the princess. They all said the same thing. Her condition was impossible to treat. Luminian biology was too different from carbon-based life. The energy patterns that made up their bodies followed rules that no one fully understood. But Ben had learned something during his months in space. Sometimes the answer was not in the complicated medical books. Sometimes it was in the simple things. "Can I be alone with her for a few minutes?" Ben asked. The other doctors looked surprised, but they left the room. Ben sat down next to the princess's crystal bed and just watched her. He did not try to analyze anything or take measurements. He just observed. The light inside her body moved in patterns. It was not random. There was a rhythm to it, like a heartbeat. But the rhythm was wrong, like a song played off key. Ben had an idea. It was crazy, but all his best ideas seemed crazy at first. He went back to find Captain Jake. "I need you to get me something from Earth," he said. "Earth? We're halfway across the galaxy. What could you possibly need from Earth?" "Acupuncture needles," Ben said. "The traditional ones, made of metal." Jake stared at him. "You want to perform acupuncture on a being made of pure energy? Not exactly acupuncture, but something like it. It took 2 days to get the needles." Princess Lyraneth was getting weaker by the hour. Ben spent those 2 days studying everything he could about Luminian energy patterns and quantum field theory. Most of it was over his head, but he began to see connections. When the needles arrived, Ben sterilized them and prepared his equipment. The Luminian doctors watched him with what might have been curiosity or horror. It was hard to tell with beings made of crystal. Double quotes, "Dr. Carter," Emperor Zethkari said. "What exactly are you planning to do?" "On Earth, we have a healing method called acupuncture. We put thin needles into specific points on the body to help energy flow better. I think your daughter's problem is not that she's sick. It's that her energy is blocked." "But she is made of energy," Dr. Nelvox protested. "How can energy be blocked?" "The same way water can be blocked in a pipe," Ben said. "Even energy has to follow certain paths." Ben approached the princess carefully. Up close, he could see the patterns of light more clearly. There were points where the energy seemed to swirl and eddy, like water hitting rocks in a stream. He took the first needle and, very gently inserted it into one of those swirling points. The princess's body flared with light for a moment, then settled into a steadier glow. Incredible, Dr. Sylvain whispered. Her energy readings are stabilizing. Ben continued working, placing needles at carefully chosen points around the princess's crystal form. It was not like any surgery he had ever performed. He was not cutting into flesh or repairing organs. He was trying to fix the flow of pure energy itself. Each needle seemed to help. The chaotic swirling of light began to smooth out into more regular patterns. The princess's glow grew stronger and more steady. After an hour of delicate work, Ben stepped back. Princess Lyraneth's crystal body was now filled with steady, flowing light that pulsed in a strong, regular rhythm. Her eyes opened. They were like stars, brilliant points of light in her crystal face. "Father?" she said weakly. Emperor Zethkari rushed to her side. "Lyraneth, my child, how do you feel?" "Better," she said. "The pain is gone. The chaos in my mind has stopped." She turned to look at Ben. "You are the human doctor I have heard about. How did you know what to do?" Ben smiled tiredly. "I watched the way the light moved in your body. It reminded me of something from my own world. Sometimes the simplest solutions work best." Dr. Nelvox was studying his instruments with amazement. "Her energy matrix has completely stabilized. I have never seen anything like this. How is it possible?" "Maybe," Ben said, "it's because I don't know enough about Luminian biology to know what's impossible." The news of Princess Lyraneth's healing spread through the galaxy faster than light. The first human to successfully treat a Luminian, the doctor who performed surgery on pure energy using primitive needles from a backward planet. But for Ben, the most important thing was simpler. As he prepared to leave Chrysalis, Princess Lyraneth came to thank him personally. "Dr. Carter," she said, her voice like silver bells, "my people have always believed that Luminians were too different from other species to be understood by them. You have shown us that we were wrong." "We're all different," Ben said, "but maybe that's what makes us able to help each other. You see things I can't see. I see things you can't see. Together, we see more than either of us could alone." As the Hippocrates left the Luminian homeworld, Captain Jake found Ben on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. "So," Jake said, "you just revolutionized quantum biology and proved that ancient Earth medicine works on energy beings. How does it feel to be the most famous doctor in the galaxy?" Ben was quiet for a long moment. "Scary," he said finally. "What if I can't do it again? What if the next case is the one I can't solve?" "Ben, you'll try anyway," Jake said. "That's what makes you who you are." Ben nodded, still looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there were more patients, more impossible cases, more chances to prove that healing knew no boundaries. He was ready for whatever came next. 1 year after saving Princess Lyraneth, Ben Carter received an invitation that changed everything. The Galactic Medical Council wanted him to speak at the Great Convergence on Nexus Prime, the most important medical conference in the galaxy. Ben stood in his quarters aboard the Hippocrates, holding the golden invitation in his hands. Captain Jake Morrison sat nearby, grinning. "This is huge, Ben," Jake said. "The Great Convergence only happens every 10 years. The best doctors from 1,000 worlds will be there." "That's what worries me," Ben replied. "What am I supposed to tell them? That I make things up as I go along?" "You tell them the truth," Jake said. "That sometimes the best medicine comes from the heart, not just the head." Nexus Prime was the most advanced medical facility in the galaxy. The entire planet was one giant hospital and research center. Ships from every corner of known space docked at the massive orbital stations. As Ben's shuttle descended toward the surface, he saw medical complexes that stretched beyond the horizon. The conference hall was enormous, with seating for 50,000 beings. When Ben walked onto the stage, he saw doctors from species he had never heard of. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others floated in tanks of liquid methane. A few were just clouds of intelligent gas held together by force fields. But before Ben could give his speech, alarms began ringing throughout the complex. Emergency broadcasts filled the air in dozens of languages. "Attention all medical personnel," the announcement said. "Massive stellar flare has struck the Tau Ceti system. Radiation exposure affecting 12 planets. Estimated casualties in the millions. All available doctors and medical ships are requested to respond immediately." The conference hall erupted in chaos. Doctors were talking frantically, making calls to their ships, organizing rescue teams. Ben stood on the stage, watching the panic spread. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He shouted, "Listen to me." His voice carried across the entire hall. "This is exactly what we need to do, but we need to do it right." The hall gradually became quiet. 50,000 beings turned to look at the human doctor on the stage. "I know you're all scared," Ben continued. "I'm scared too. But right now, millions of people need us. We can't help them if we're running around in panic." Dr. Sylvan appeared at Ben's side, along with two other doctors Ben had never met. One was a human woman with short black hair and steady hands. The other was a man in a military uniform with scars on his face. "Ben," Dr. Sylvan said quickly, "this is Dr. Lisa Warren. She's a human surgeon who specializes in nanotechnology, medicine. And this is Commander Ryan Brooks. He was a battlefield medic before he became a doctor." Ben shook their hands quickly. "We need to organize this properly. How many medical ships do we have available?" "Approximately 800, Dr. Warren said, checking her tablet. "But radiation exposure affects different species in different ways. We'll need specialized treatment protocols for each race." "That's where you come in," Commander Brooks said to Ben. "Your experience with cross-species medicine. Nobody else has treated as many different aliens as you have." Ben thought quickly. "We need to divide the rescue operation into teams. Each team handles specific types of radiation exposure. Lisa, can your nanotechnology help with cellular repair?" "Absolutely," Dr. Warren said. "I've been working on microrobots. That can fix DNA damage. But I've never tested them on alien biology." "Then we'll test them now," Ben said. "Ryan, what about triage protocols?" Commander Brooks smiled grimly. "I've handled mass casualties before. The key is knowing who you can save and who you can't. Make the hard choices fast so you can save more lives overall." Over the next 2 hours, Ben found himself coordinating the largest medical rescue operation in galactic history. He divided the 50,000 doctors into specialized teams. Each team had a specific job: radiation treatment, surgical repair, psychological support, or evacuation coordination. Dr. Warren's nanotechnology teams would handle the worst cases of cellular damage. Commander Brooks would manage the battlefield. Triage protocols. Dr. Sylvan would coordinate between different alien medical technologies. And Ben would do what he did best: solve the impossible cases that nobody else could handle. The journey to Tau Ceti took 18 hours. Ben spent that time studying radiation exposure data from 12 different species. Each race reacted differently to the stellar radiation. Some developed cancer-like growths. Others had their nervous systems damaged. A few species actually became more energetic, but in dangerous ways that could kill them. When they arrived at Tau Ceti, the scope of the disaster became clear. 12 planets, each with millions of inhabitants. Space stations and mining colonies scattered throughout the system. Everyone and everything had been exposed to lethal levels of radiation. Ben's medical ship, the Asclepius, landed on the largest planet first. The surface was covered with temporary medical camps. Patients lay on stretchers under emergency shelters, waiting for treatment. "My God," Dr. Warren whispered as they walked through the camp. "There are so many of them." Ben nodded grimly. He had seen disasters before, but nothing like this. Beings from dozens of species lay dying, each requiring different treatments. The local doctors looked exhausted and overwhelmed. "Okay," Ben said to his team. "Remember what we planned. Lisa, set up the Nanotechnology Treatment Center in Sector 7. Ryan, establish triage protocols at the main landing site. Sylvan, coordinate with the local medical staff. What about you?" Dr. Warren asked. "I'm going to do what I always do," Ben said. "Find the cases nobody else can solve." For the next 3 days, Ben barely slept. He moved from patient to patient, species to species, solving problems that had stumped other doctors. A draconian child whose scales were falling off due to radiation damage. A Corellian elder whose fur had turned toxic. A group of Altarian traders whose 6 arms had become paralyzed. Each case was different, but Ben applied the same principle he had learned over the past year. Look for the simple solution that everyone else missed. Sometimes it was a matter of treating symptoms in a different order. Sometimes it required combining treatments from different species. Often, it just needed someone willing to try something new. Dr. Warren's nanotechnology proved incredibly effective. Her tiny medical robots could repair DNA damage at the cellular level, but they needed to be programmed differently for each alien species. Ben helped her adapt the programming, using his knowledge of how different races responded to treatment. Commander, Brooks's triage system saved thousands of lives. By quickly identifying who could be saved and who needed immediate attention, the medical teams could focus their efforts where they would do the most good. But the breakthrough came when Ben realized something that should have been obvious from the start. The radiation exposure was not random. It followed patterns based on each species' homeworld environment. "That's it," Ben said, calling his team together on the 4th day. "The radiation is affecting each species based on what kind of world they evolved on. Desert species are handling the heat radiation better. Ocean species are more vulnerable to the electromagnetic effects. So if we group treatments by evolutionary background instead of current symptoms, Dr. Warren began. We can treat multiple species with similar protocols," Ben finished. "It's not about what they look like now. It's about where they came from." This insight revolutionized their treatment approach. Instead of developing hundreds of different protocols, they created 12 basic treatment categories based on evolutionary history. A desert world draconian and a desert world human could be treated with similar methods. Even though they looked completely different, the rescue operation became known as the Carter Protocols, the first standardized system for treating multiple alien species during large-scale disasters. Medical schools across the galaxy would study these protocols for generations. When the emergency was over, Ben found himself back on Nexus Prime, standing before the same audience that had been there 2 weeks earlier. But now they looked at him differently. He was no longer just the human doctor with strange ideas. He was the coordinator of the greatest medical rescue in galactic history. "Dr. Carter," said High Counselor Trell Van, the head of the Galactic Medical Council, "your actions during the Tau Ceti disaster have saved an estimated 2.3 million lives. On behalf of the Council, I would like to offer you a position as the first human senior medical advisor." Ben looked out at the audience. Thousands of doctors from hundreds of worlds, all looking at him with respect and admiration. A year ago, most of them had thought humans were only good for fighting wars. "I accept," Ben said, "but only if we can establish new training programs. Every doctor in this room should learn to treat patients from different species. We're all part of the same galaxy now. We need to start acting like it. The applause lasted for 10 minutes. As Ben walked off the stage, he thought about how much had changed since that first day aboard the Asclepius. He had come to space wanting to help people. Now he was in a position to change how the entire galaxy thought about medicine. The real work was just beginning. 5 years had passed since the Tau Ceti disaster. Dr. Benjamin Carter stood at the window of his office on Luna, Earth's moon, watching students from across the galaxy walk through the halls of the Carter Institute. Humans worked alongside Draconians. Alterians shared laboratories with Corellians. The dream he had carried since his first day in space had finally become real. Ben was older now, with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes. But his hands were still steady, and his mind was still sharp. The Institute had become the most respected medical school in the galaxy, where doctors learned to treat any species. Anywhere. A soft knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Zara Okafor entered, carrying a datapad and wearing the blue robes of the Institute's faculty. "Ben, we have visitors," she said with a smile. "Some old friends want to see you." Ben followed Zara to the main conference room. Inside, he found faces he had not seen in years. Kith Vel, the Zilarian trader whose life Ben had saved on his first day. Princess Lyra Neth, now glowing with perfect health. Dr. Sylvan, who had become the Institute's Dean of Alien Medicine. Even Captain Jake Morrison was there, though he now commanded the entire medical transport fleet. "What's all this about?" Ben asked, looking around the room. "Sit down, old friend," Kithnell said in his clicking voice. "We have something to tell you." Ben sat, curious and a little worried. Had something gone wrong? Was there another crisis somewhere in the galaxy? Princess Lyraneth stepped forward, her crystal body radiating gentle light. "Dr. Carter, the Galactic Council has made a decision. We are naming the new Universal Medical Treaty after you. The Carter Accords will establish the same medical standards across all member worlds." Ben was speechless. The Universal Medical Treaty had been discussed for decades, but political differences between species had always prevented agreement. Now they were going to make it real? "There's more," Dr. Sylvan said, his 6 arms gesturing excitedly. Medical schools on 300 worlds are adopting the Carter method as their primary curriculum. Human healing philosophy is being taught, alongside traditional alien medicine. Jake stepped forward and put a hand on Ben's shoulder, and the Galactic Medical Council voted unanimously to create a new position, Director of Cross-Species Medical Development. They want you to take it. Ben looked around at his friends, feeling overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Kithel urged. "The galaxy needs you, Ben, not just as a doctor, but as a teacher, as a leader." Before Ben could answer, another knock came at the door. A young Draconian student entered, looking nervous but determined. His blue scales were polished to a shine, and he wore the white coat of a first-year medical student. "Dr. Carter," the student said, bowing slightly. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have an emergency in the teaching hospital. A human patient with a rare blood condition. The other doctors don't know how to treat him." Ben stood up immediately. "What are the symptoms?" "Rapid blood loss, but we can't find the source. His blood seems to be breaking down on its own. We've never seen anything like it." Ben was already moving toward the door. "Have you tried standard human coagulation therapy?" "Yes, sir. It didn't work. Neither did Alterian blood stabilizers or Draconian clotting compounds." As they walked quickly through the halls of the Institute, Ben's mind was racing. A human patient with a condition that resisted both human and alien treatments. It sounded impossible. They entered the emergency ward to find chaos. Human and alien doctors were working frantically around a patient's bed. The man was pale and unconscious, with medical monitors beeping urgently around him. "Status report," Ben said calmly. Dr. Lisa Warren looked up from her equipment. She was now the Institute's head of experimental medicine. Patient is Carl Davis, age 32, mining engineer from the asteroid belt. He was working on a joint project with Luminian energy miners when he suddenly collapsed. Luminian energy miners? Ben asked. What kind of exposure did he have? 6 months of working directly with Luminian crystal technology. But we've tested for energy poisoning. Nothing. Ben moved to examine the patient. Carl's blood work was unlike anything he had ever seen. The blood cells seemed to be vibrating at a frequency that made them unstable. Wait, Ben said slowly. What if this isn't a disease? What if it's an adaptation? What do you mean? Dr. Warren asked. Humans adapt. That's what we do best. Carl has been working with energy beings for months. What if his body is trying to become more like them? Ben turned to the young draconian student who had brought him here. What's your name? Velkorth, sir. Velkorth, I want you to contact Princess Lyraneth immediately. Ask her to come here and bring some of her medical equipment. You want to treat a human with Luminian medicine? Dr. Warren asked. I want to treat a human who might be becoming something new, Ben said. An hour later, Princess Lyraneth arrived with a team of Luminian healers. They brought crystalline medical devices that hummed with energy. Dr. Carter, the princess said, this is most unusual. But if you think it will help... Ben watched as the Luminian healers scanned Carl with their energy-based instruments. The readings were incredible. Carl's blood was indeed beginning to resonate with energy frequencies, just like Luminian biology. He's adapting, Princess Lyraneth confirmed. His body is learning to process energy directly, but the adaptation is happening too quickly. It will kill him unless we stabilize the process. Working together, human and Luminian doctors developed a treatment protocol that had never been tried before. They used Luminian energy stabilizers combined with human blood therapy to slow down Carl's adaptation process. It worked. Carl's condition stabilized, and he regained consciousness. More importantly, he retained his new abilities. He could now work directly with energy-based technology without protection. This is just the beginning, Ben said to the assembled doctors. If humans can adapt to work with Luminians, imagine what other possibilities exist. We might be looking at the future of galactic cooperation. Young Velkorth looked up at Ben with admiration. Dr. Carter, will you teach us how to think like this? How to see connections that others miss? Ben smiled at the eager student. That's what we're here for. But remember, the most important thing isn't the techniques or the equipment. It's never giving up on a patient, no matter how impossible the case seems. Later that evening, Ben stood again at his office window. The ceremony for the Carter Accords would be tomorrow. Representatives from 1,000 worlds would gather to sign the treaty that would standardize medical care across the galaxy. Zara joined him at the window. Proud of what you've accomplished? Proud of what we've all accomplished, Ben corrected. I never could have done any of this alone. But you started it. That first day on the Asclepius, when you refused to let Kithvel die. That's when everything changed. Ben nodded, thinking about how far they had all come. Medical schools across the galaxy now taught the Carter method, the philosophy that healing knows no species boundaries. The Institute trained doctors who could treat anyone, anywhere. The Carter protocols were used in every major hospital. But more than that, the galaxy itself had changed. Humans were no longer seen as violent Deathworlders. They were respected as healers, teachers, and innovators. The prejudices that had once seemed insurmountable were slowly disappearing. A new group of students walked past the window. Humans, Draconians, Alterians, Corellians, and species Ben still could not identify. They were laughing together, working together, learning from each other. You know what the best part is? Ben said to Zara. What? In 50 years, when these students are running hospitals across the galaxy, they won't think it's strange to treat different species. To them, it will. Just be normal medicine. The next morning, the ceremony for the Carter Accords began. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy gathered in the Institute's Great Hall. Ben was asked to give the opening speech. He stood at the podium, looking out at the assembly. Beings who had once considered each other enemies now sat side by side, united by a common goal, to heal rather than harm. 5 years ago, Ben began, I was just a trauma surgeon from Detroit who wanted to help people. I had no idea that people would come to include beings made of crystal, energy, gas, and forms of life I never imagined possible. The audience listened intently as Ben continued, but I learned something important. Healing is not about understanding every detail of biology or mastering every medical technique. Healing is about caring enough to try, even when the odds seem impossible. He paused, looking at the faces in the audience. Today, we are not just signing a treaty. We are promising each other that no being in this galaxy will suffer alone, that wherever there is pain, there will be someone ready to help. The applause filled the hall for several minutes. As Ben stepped down from the podium, he thought about all the patients he had treated over the years. Kifvel, Princess Lyraneth, the plague victims on Kepler 442b, the radiation survivors from Tau Ceti, and thousands of others. Each one had taught him something new about what it meant to be a healer. Years later, when historians wrote about the golden age of galactic medicine, they would mark its beginning with a simple moment, a human doctor refusing to give up on a dying alien patient. But Ben Carter knew the truth. The golden age had not begun with him.